So it's been with me a very long time now.
And how did you make it part of your profession?
It's a story that I've sort of told a couple of times. I'd always watched the show. I'd watched Doctor Who, I'd watched Blake 7, I'd watched all the Jerry Anderson series, Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet. And then one day I was watching television and they interviewed a special effects designer. And that designer was talking about the work they'd just done on Blake 7. And I suddenly realised that there was actually a profession, because I'd made models of Lego, Meccano, Airfix kits. I'd then blown them up with fireworks, and then I'd filmed them on my dad's Super 8 camera. And I suddenly realised that somebody would actually pay me to do that job, and that was the BBC. And my mum wrote to them and said, "Is there a training scheme that you can go on?" And at that time there was, and it makes it sound incredibly simple, but I visited the BBC when I was in my teens. They put me on file as potential effects designer. I left college, they phoned me up, they went, "Are you free?" I left college on the Friday, I started working at the BBC on the Monday, and having been a kid making stuff, you know, and a fan, the first job I'm given on Doctor Who is building the police box for Trial of a Time Lord. So it's a very fairy tale story in some ways, and as I say, it progresses from there.
You can't see that story happening today, can you, really?
You can't, unfortunately. I think it's very sad that we don't have a big organisation like the BBC that can afford to take on people at a sort of trainee level and bring them up through the system, because, you know, everything I'm doing now as an effects designer is stuff I was taught by the BBC.
What was the working conditions like? Did you go in every day? Did you have your own sort of warehouse there?
Yeah, the effects department at the time was the biggest permanent special effects facility working in the world. There were over 100 members of staff, because at the time there's no producer choice had come in, so if you were a BBC show, you used the BBC effects department. So that's across the board. That was Top of the Pops, Tomorrow's World, Doctor Who. I mean, this is the thing you've got to remember, Doctor Who was just one show being made by the BBC, and I think in the year that I joined, which was in 1984, I think the BBC had something like 87 permanent drama series or serials being made, and so the in-house department serviced all those. So we had a huge, great sort of effects workshop, which, you know, was a real Aladdin's cave. You know, anyone who ever visited, and I know there are a few people who did pop into the effects department sort of during the 80s, there'd be Daleks and K9 and bits and pieces and TARDIS consoles, but there would also be all the props that Compo used to go down hills with from Last of the Summer Wine. So there'd be guys welding casters onto the bases of bathtubs and things. There'd be all the equipment to do rain and snow and all those sort of atmospheric effects. Everything under one roof. It was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Now, Dick, in that episode we just saw, there's a sort of throwaway line about Bernard Quatermass, isn't there, in the British Rocket Group. A little bird tells me that you worked on Quatermass. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. When I joined the radiophonic workshop, one of the first questions they said to me was, "Can you cut discs?" I said, yes, having hurled many an old 78 acetate through the hatch to radio newsreel. I said, "I can cut discs." They said, "Good. We're going to do some effects of Quatermass in the pit, and we need 144 discs cut in duplicate." Why? Radiophonic Workshop made sounds that people didn't like for plays that people couldn't understand. And that was the third programme for you. But they used this magic manipulative tool called tape, which is very nice for us, but very unfortunate for the rest of the BBC who didn't seem to have it. So we would get a lot of our sound sources off disc, those round black shiny things. We'd use our sort of, I don't know, good luck or magic and tape to get it to sound peculiar. Then for the rest of the studios to use it, we had to put it back on the disc again. We had to do it twice because they were acetate discs and the first copy wore out during the rehearsal. So, but yes, I worked on the Quatermass and the pit sound.
Now, Dick, in that episode we just saw, there's a sort of throwaway line about Bernard Quatermass, isn't there, and the British Rocket Group. A little bird tells me that you worked on Quatermass. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. When I joined the radiophonic workshop, one of the first questions they said to me was, "Can you cut discs?" I said, yes, having hurled many an old 78 acetate through the hatch to radio newsreel. I said, I can cut discs. They said, good. We're going to do some effects of Quatermass in the pit, and we need 144 discs cut in duplicate. Why? Radiophonic Workshop made sounds that people didn't like, for plays that people couldn't understand. And that was the third programme for you. But they use this magic manipulative tool called tape, which is very nice for us, but very unfortunate for the rest of the BBC who didn't seem to have it. So we would get a lot of our sound sources off disc, those round black shiny things. We'd use our sort of, I don't know, good luck or magic and tape to get it to sound peculiar. Then for the rest of the studios to use it, we had to put it back on the disc again. We had to do it twice because they were acetate discs and the first copy wore out during the rehearsal. So, but yes, I worked on the Quatermass and the pit sounds.
This is a two-part question. Who played Fire Escape and what is her connection to a former Doctor Who companion? There's a chorus of dicks. What was the answer, Dave?
Judy Brennan married to Mark Strickland.
Absolutely true, yeah, it is. Judy Brennan married to Mark Strickland. Very, very good. When we're setting these, I have to say I'm always surprised that anybody gets them right. It's amazing. The second question
I'm surprised Justin gets them right.
I wasn't looking them up. What was the name of Helen A's pet in the Happiness Patrol?
I've seen one back there, I'm afraid.
Okay, let's see who Dick selected this time.
I saw your hand very early on. Phoebe.
Ooh, have you got the full name?
I was only 12.
It was Stiggerax Phoebe, yes, very good.
And so, I don't know why. So, you start with that, then you start researching the material, and I look back at the history of the Daleks, and there's this scene in Destiny of the Daleks when they climb up a rope ladder, and Tom Baker looks down and says, if you're going to take over the universe, you have to climb after me on this ladder, and they can't, of course. And I thought, right, that's going to be my number cliffhanger. It's going to be the answer to that question, yes we can. So then I knew, and it was great because it like all fell into place, and I knew what my first cliffhanger was, and I knew what everything was going to happen. And then I looked at that today thinking, oh, Silvester's got this range, and if I'd been a bit more kind of like used to Silvester, I would have got better sort of given him more material to work with across the ranges and stuff. And then it's full of stuff that's like first script stuff that you sit there like the very pretentious end lines, where someone goes, well, bubbly bubbly bum, or no, bum 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 bum. So if you watch it in English, notice every 3 lines there's someone goes bum 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 like that. And I saw you guys going, how the hell am I going to get this line out? And I think, naturalistic dialogue and everything. So
You became very excited.
Oh no, I was just about to say about the Dalek going up the stairs, because that was quite an extraordinary event in itself. Because what they did was, wisely, they got a fully weighted Dalek, and then they stuck 2 poles in the side of it, and then they stuck those poles through the wall onto another pole going up parallel to the stairs. And then they got 10 men on the other side, and then they actually picked up the Dalek, and they pushed it up like that all the way up the stairs. The poor Dalek was throwing up halfway up. That was high technology when they in order to do it. It was extraordinary.
Oh, you've got some food. You've got proper food. When we finish, we're going to go out and have breakfast. I think it must be some big investigation. Special.